Hey guys, we're inside today because it's raining, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the way we brood our chicks here on the farm. Our chickens are primarily pets. They are kind of our lawn ornaments. They all have their own little personalities, and we keep a small flock. It's usually right around a dozen. We get some new replacements each year because of the natural attrition of nature or the aging out of certain birds and whatnot. Some of them may fall ill and pass on, but we generally start out with 6 replacements every spring. And out of that 6, usually 4 make it all the way to adulthood, being a full year old. And yes, we do lose on average 2 out of the starts each year. And it's not due to bad keeping or whatever, it's due to fox or raccoons or possums or other predators that happen to get into the pen or catch them while they're out free ranging in the yard. It's a sad, unfortunate fact, but it does happen, but we take that into account. So out of the 4 remaining, they will go on to replace 4 birds that have aged out over time. We currently have 3 barred rocks that are approaching 4 years old, which is about what you can expect from a barnyard bird. And those 4 have slowed down in egg production, they've slowed down physically, they sit down in the yard quite often. They're not ill, they're just old and they take breaks. So they'll find a shady spot and just kind of sit down and watch the day. And I know that they're not ill because they do it together. All 3 of them will move around together and forage for a while, and then they'll sit in the shadow of somewhere cool and prune together. So that indicates that they're not ill, they're just getting older. Anyway, so we pick up 6 replacements every spring, and you'll notice that our brooder is a little different than some of the other ones that you may have seen in chicken magazines or whatnot. Something that we have learned is that if we want to socialize our birds, but not yet exactly have the time to handle them every single day or multiple times a day, we found that the clear tote that we're using here enables us to walk back and forth, and they can see through it, and they get used to us being in proximity to them. And the same thing with the little wire lid that we've made here. This allows for free flow of air exchange, keeps it from getting too hot inside the brooder, but more importantly, it keeps them in. But it also allows them to see out the top. So it doesn't, if we lean over the top of them, they don't get super excited, they don't get scared, they become accustomed to us in this environment over time. And yes, we do keep them in the house for the first couple of weeks. As soon as they're fully feathered, we will move them outside and continue to do the same thing for another couple of weeks. We'll actually break them into 2 groups of 3 in each brooder, so that they have a little more room to themselves. And that's the second stop before they move out to the temporary holding pen that we raise them in until they're large enough to go in with the full-size birds. If we were to move them out into the coop with the full-size birds at this size or this age, or even after they finish feathering out, the large birds would absolutely kill them. And it's a sad fact, but they do pick on smaller birds. It's just the way it goes. So we have a small coop off to the side. We keep them in that one for about 6 weeks, and then they graduate to what we call the big girl's pen when they're about 4 months old. And that's large enough to where they can defend themselves, they're fully feathered out, and they learn the rules of the coop and find their way in the pecking order. But you can see in the corner, possibly over here, we have our water and our food. We change this daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Always making sure they have fresh, clean water. We use pine shavings in the bottom. It's the easiest on their feet, and it tends to, if it gets wet, the wood chips will soak it up instead of making puddles on the bottom. And we change that bedding at least twice a week to keep it fresh. And as you can see, they're pretty happy and healthy. We have our little heat lamp in the corner. So if they're cold, they can migrate to one end of the brooder, and if they become hot, they can move to the middle and cool down a little bit, or all the way down to feed and draw water from. And we do keep the water away from the heat specifically so it doesn't go stagnant or get warm. This little device that we have up here, this little tower, they didn't like that too much. This little A-frame tower we got off of Amazon. It was like $10, a little miniature roosting bar for them. We'll put this in when they're 2 to 3 weeks old, and this teaches them how to roost. without falling. It gives them something to play with. There's some mental enrichment involved in it. And they do like to play King of the Mountain by climbing up top and pushing each other off and whatnot. They have odd little games they play with it. And you can see down here they can run through the middle. And so if we set it down in the brooder, they can still traverse back and forth through the middle of the brooder or on the sides because it fits fairly comfortably with room on each side. So they still have room to move around in there, and if we pop it down in there, they'll fluster for a moment, but then immediately they'll start climbing up on it. Now, one thing that we did do with this before we put it in there is we coated it with about a dozen coats of spray lacquer. And we did that in order to be able to wash it and keep it clean because they are going to mess on it, and you need to be able to get that off. There's a few little spots on it right now, and when we clean out the brooder at the end of the week, we'll clean that up as well. In here we have 3 Isa Browns and 3 Golden Comets. We generally want to get 6 of the same of whatever type that we get so that we can tell the individual groups apart as they age. But this year, Tractor Supply only had 3 of each when we got there, so that's what we got. The Isa Browns, we favor those, and the Golden Comets for that matter. We favor those breeds because they are fairly gentle, they're very inquisitive, they're very tolerant of humans, and they are really good in the coop with each other. Now the caveat to that is when they get a little older and you introduce other chickens, it can take a little while longer for those groups to meld if they ever do, because the Isa Browns tend to be a little more aggressive with newcomers. It does eventually sort itself out, but in the beginning they can be a little more aggressive with the newcomers. They're a lighter bird. They're not quite as large as a barred rock or an Orpington. They're a smaller bird. They tend to yield eggs much sooner, almost by 4 to 6 weeks sooner. And they'll run about 24 months laying almost every day, about every 30 hours. Very consistent dark brown egg layers. We absolutely love their production. We love them as birds because they are so calm and so adaptive. And honestly, out of all the chicks that we've raised in this method, they tend to be the quietest. Some of the other ones that we've raised just never stop chirping throughout the day. It's like they never sleep, even at night. And they're very loud. These groups tend to be fairly quiet, just little peeps, and you can hear them. But that is why we use a clear tote, is to help socialize the birds and get them used to us. If you're using a box or a dark colored plastic tote, they don't see you unless you come over the top of them. And that is typically where predation comes from for them, is from above. So that tends to set them off and scare them, spook them, especially if you're reaching down into the pen. But if you get a clear one and put it in a traffic area, they get used to you going by, they get used to you being present, and they're a lot less skittish when they get moved out to the barnyard. But that's an introduction to our chickens and how we brood them here on the farm. I fully admit that this system, this setup, is not adaptable to all size farms, and if you're doing 200 or 300 layers at a time, this system isn't for you. This is mainly aimed at backyard birds that are going to be lawn ornaments or pets, and it just helps get them familiar with you and your presence. Farm production birds don't necessarily need that. So keep it to scale, keep it in your context, and if you decide to use something like this in the future, drop us a comment, let us know. If you have other ways that you socialize your birds, let us know that too. Thanks.